Hi, this is Kate Morgan, the host of the Abortion Queen of the South podcast, and today I'm going to inform you about an absolutely horrendous bill that I'm actually going to be testifying about tomorrow, and if you have the time, you definitely should too. Representative Dunahoo wants women dead for not following his religion. Representative Dunahoo and other anti-abortion extremists who sponsor and support this bill have never had to hold the hands of a crying patient who was overwhelmed by protesters, console a patient who was referred to us for miscarriage treatment, or had to calm children who have been raped and needed an abortion. In fact, disgusting men like Representative Dunahoo and anyone who supports HB 441 think that these patients should be forced to endure these pregnancies because it's God's will. They're okay with little girls getting raped and women getting hurt. This bill treats an abortion, a legitimate medical procedure, as a murder. Just a reminder, murder carries the death penalty in Georgia. So religious extremists like Representative Dunahoo clearly wrote this bill because they want to inflict their extreme beliefs on all of us. Representative Dunahoo and others like him want to inflict cruelty on those who don't follow his religious beliefs. They want us to either follow their religion or be killed. This disgusting bill grants full legal personhood to embryos and fetuses from the moment of fertilization under Georgia criminal law. Fetal personhood bills are laws or legislative proposals that define fertilized eggs, embryos, or fetuses as legal persons with the same rights as people who have been born. These laws typically declare that life begins at conception and aim to extend full constitutional protections, including criminal and civil law, to unborn entities. So this means that a fetus with no thoughts, feelings, emotions, responsibilities, or obligations is treated the same as a grown-ass adult woman. This bill also allows homicide and assault charges to be brought for the death of an unborn child. This could even be in an accidental scenario. For example, if a woman drinks alcohol and she doesn't know she's pregnant and something happens to the child, she could be held liable. If the woman accidentally lifts something too heavy, if she's in a work environment that's quote-unquote dangerous, whether she knows she's pregnant or not, she could be held liable for literally murdering a child, whether she intends to or not. By doing so, a fetus, including one who cannot survive on its own, has more rights than a living, breathing woman. By defining embryos and fetuses as full legal persons, any pregnancy loss could be investigated as a potential homicide or manslaughter, including miscarriages. These are already painful experiences. In Georgia, as well as many other states where these bills are being pushed, the death penalty is still active and can be applied. Keep in mind that roughly 20% of known pregnancies end in miscarriages and stillbirths. So roughly that amount of patients could be investigated for homicide and potentially face the death penalty. Similar laws in other states have already led to women being jailed and arrested after miscarriages or stillbirths. In some states, pregnant people have been jailed without trial to quote-unquote protect their fetus, essentially stripping them of their own rights. It opens a dangerous door to allow pregnant people to be criminalized, even if the factors are beyond their control. It could also create a chilling effect where people avoid seeking medical care entirely for pregnancy complications out of fear of being prosecuted, since it doesn't include clear protections for people who experience unintentional pregnancy loss. Providers may also delay or deny treatment, something that's already happening, including miscarriage management or care for ectopic pregnancies, for fear of being accused of facilitating abortion or fetal harm. These laws disproportionately harm low-income people, people of color, and those in rural communities who already face barriers to health care. Many of these patients already have to choose between traveling out of state to receive abortion care or being forced to have a child that they cannot take care of. Even if they are within the 6-week time frame, they still have to arrange for childcare, time off of work, which may mean literally not being able to put food on the table, and costs associated with the procedure itself. On top of that, they are more likely to be prosecuted and face harsher charges since they cannot afford adequate representation. These laws are often part of a broader agenda to ban abortion entirely, even in cases of rape, incest, or threat to the pregnant person's health. By defining personhood from fertilization, they can also ban common forms of birth control like IUDs or emergency contraception and in vitro fertilization, where embryos are often created and frozen. In 2024, the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos are considered quote-unquote extrauterine children, effectively granting them legal personhood status. This decision has had significant implications for IVF practices in the state. If these laws continue, this will lead to continued attacks across the country. As you can see, pregnant people could lose the right to make decisions about their own bodies. There is a risk of heightened security and potential criminal charges for behaviors perceived to harm the fetus. Courts and hospitals have used personhood arguments to force pregnant people to undergo surgeries, remain hospitalized, or follow certain diets, even against medical advice or the person's wishes. Georgia's House Bill 441 already has nearly 24 sponsors. We can't pretend this isn't the modern Republican Party as we know it and that cruelty isn't the point. They're just saying what a lot of us already knew. If you want to prevent abortions, allow access to education, economic stability, family planning resources, and maternal cares. Passing barbaric laws like these helps no one, and it just proves that cruelty is the point with these people. However, Georgia isn't the only state where this is happening. These quote-unquote equal protection bills are popping up all over the country to try to desensitize us to the cruelty. In Idaho, Senator Brian Shippey wants women seeking an abortion to be charged with murder. Similar to House Bill 441 and other quote-unquote equal protection laws, there would be no exceptions for rape or incest. It would also allow the father of the fetus to file a wrongful death lawsuit in civil court. This bill would also open the door for law enforcement to investigate any woman who's suspected of having an abortion, even in the case of a miscarriage. So it would basically make what is an already incredibly painful experience even worse. But we don't even need these bills to punish women. Not that we should be anyway. It happened before the Dobbs decision. It has only increased after. Recently, a 24-year-old Georgia woman was arrested for a miscarriage after quote-unquote concealing the death of a fetus. Despite being found unconscious and bleeding, she was still arrested for disposing of her fetal remains in the trash. This is yet another case of a woman of color being charged under obscure laws that have no merit, similar to the Brittany Watts case in Ohio that sparked national outrage. Charging Georgians with murder for a legitimate medical procedure is cruel and hits those hardest who already need our help. Instead of punishing them, we need to focus on improving our education system, access to childcare, access to healthcare, and access to housing. The average family in Georgia cannot afford children, especially those at or near the poverty line. Let's change that instead. These are real issues facing the state of Georgia. And Representative Dunahoo pushing his extreme religious beliefs is not one of them. This is a personal problem that only he and a few extreme, crazy, right-wing nuts are obsessed with. This is clearly a man who desires to use his elected public office to inflict cruelty on the people he was elected to serve. If this bill passes, every horror story that I mentioned will become a daily occurrence. To find your legislators, please click for the Plural Policy website and let them know what you think of this abhorrent bill.